Okay, it is 6:31, February 23rd, 2022. I call this meeting the Wellfleet Select Board to order in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting laws allowed by the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The first order of business is announcements, open session, and public comments. Please note that public comments must be brief and the board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Let's see. Are there any?
I have one and I'm trying to pull it up on my other computer. There's a wonderful letter from Suzanne Grout Thomas regarding the help of the police with the Council on Aging, and I want to get it all right, so I've got to read the letter. So she is thanking the police chief for allowing Sergeant Michael Turner and telecommunicator Emily Miller to be the liaisons to the Council on Aging. They both stepped up after departure of Officer George Spirito, who was our first liaison. The pandemic put an additional weight on their presence. They willingly and cheerfully helped package meals for over 50 people per week during the pandemic. And now that we have switched to grab and go meals, they are a strong presence each Thursday. The meals were delivered by teams of volunteers, and Mike and Emily took one of the routes each week. Their interactions with our people extends beyond the 4 hours a week on Thursdays. During the time that they have been liaisons, the reassurance list has grown from 10 to over 40. Both of them make themselves available to assist us whenever we reach out. Emily has taken seed catalogs to our isolated individual and talked about spring planting with him. When the COA staff was calling all 500 people over 75 in Wellfleet to advise them of a COVID vaccine clinic in March, one gentleman thanked me for the call and said he felt as if he had been forgotten by everyone and how lonely he was. She spoke to Sergeant Turner and he paid a personal visit to the gentleman, convinced him to sign up for the reassurance list so that he would have a daily telephone conversation with the dispatcher at Wellfleet Police Department. Their kindness and support are appreciated by our people and by staff. This is a stellar example of community policing at its very best. And I agree, I think everybody should know how our wonderful town is always goes deeper than what it appears. Thank you.
Okay, Suzanne?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a brief announcement about a new activity at the Adult Community Center. Starting the first Wednesday in March, first and third Wednesdays afternoons will be game day. We have some wonderful new cornhole games that are inside or outside activated. And also we have a variety of board games and card games. So come by yourself, bring a friend, hang out and enjoy playing games. I will add that the Friends of the Council on Aging have donated 4 ionic air scrubbers, and the air in the big room is now deemed 97% free of all viruses when the scrubbers are on. So it's a safe place to come and relax and enjoy yourself. Hope to see you there.
Okay. And then there's also an additional letter of correspondence that I would like to bring up right now, and that is there's a letter from the EPA from the office locally, and the EPA has stated that they have ruled that the potential discharge of radioactive water would be illegal under the EPA rules as well. So let's see, are there any others at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's move it on to licenses. So last week, these licenses were on our agenda. At the time we asked for additional documentation, but I looked back and Jeannie Mack said that that documentation has not been included in the packet in the past. I looked back and that is correct. So I would like to move these licenses tonight, if that is to the satisfaction of the board.
Yes, it's good with, fine with me. Do you want me to make that motion?
Ryan or Janet, will you read out what they are, however? Thank you. That's
Yes.
Tony, sorry.
Helen, by now I recognize your voice.
Yeah, but the others may not. Thank you.
So
Okay.
I move to,
All right.
sorry, I move to approve the following common victualler licenses to Endless Coast and to the Wellfleet Drive-In and Flea Market.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay. So then licenses B, I move to approve the weekday entertainment license for the Wellfleet Drive-In and Flea Market.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. And then licenses C, I move to approve the class 2 license for LNHR or LNR Auto.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I. I need to be let back in. My computer just did something really weird.
You're on right now.
Well, I don't see any of you. Never mind. Don't worry about it.
John?
Yeah, since we're discussing the licenses, I was contacted before our last meeting by a local auto repair shop wondering where their license was. And I made an inquiry into the town hall. And I haven't seen it come up yet. I wondered what the procedure is for dealing with something like that.
Check with Rebecca and Charlie.
Because
So-
they indicated that their check had been cashed.
Yeah, so I'd say follow up with the town, with administration after tonight.
Yeah, sorry, John, I forgot about that.
Okay.
Okay, and so the public hearing, for the grant license number 792 ARC is continued to March 8th, 2022 at 6 p.m. For a variety of reasons, including giving the licensee additional time, and the town is still review, and the matter is still under review tonight. So we are not going to be discussing this hearing or this license tonight. Okay.
But
Yep.
don't we need a motion to continue it to that date certain?
I mean, we can make a motion. It's not required. It's allowed. The chair is allowed to continue it, but we can make a motion.
So let's just move then.
Yeah. So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, I.
Helen, did you vote?
Yeah, I sort of voted right after you. That's the way I'm conditioned.
Okay. So motion carries 5-0. Oh, and one other thing, because the other thing I forgot at the beginning of the meeting, the FinCom is meeting at 7, and Charlie is going to leave us at 7, and then meet with FinCom during that time, just so everybody's aware. Mike?
I'm recusing myself from this
From the other
rest of
public
the-
hearings?
for
Yeah.
the rest of these public hearings.
Okay. So I open the public hearing for grant license number 85-1-A. That's a I think it's pretty straightforward. It's a transfer of license from Randy Williams and Charter Williams to Randy Williams, Charter Williams. And I'm sorry, I'm not gonna.
Come on, Ryan.
Nemanja
Let's try it.
Kristmanovic.
Okay. All right. Are there,
Nemanja Kristmanovic. I
Yep.
believe.
are there any questions regarding this?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
So Randy Williams' son, Chad Charter Williams, who is a longtime member of the shellfishing community, grew up here. But I thought that Chad lived somewhere else. He wasn't domiciled in Wellfleet, putting his kids through school, paying taxes from here. I would like to know a little more about this because we are being very strict about that across the board. So through you, Ryan, to Nancy Chavetta, a couple of people asked me about this, and so I'm bringing it up. Thank you.
Okay. Nancy?
Hi. So I verified Chad's domicile. He has everything registered at Town Hall for Wellfleet as his domicile. In addition, he just recently forwarded me his federal and state of Massachusetts tax returns. So I am comfortable with that we have proven his domicile here. And he states that he is here more than 183 days a year, which is what it was required by Mass General Law.
Yeah, I thought he lived in New York. Helen?
Yeah, he is living most of the time here. Is that the case? In other words, do his kids go to school here? People get to go away for part of the year if they want to, if they're domiciled, but
My understanding is he's here more than 183 days a year.
okay, well, that's what the
He
IRS.
works in New York, but he goes back and forth. And he's on the call if you want to ask him any questions.
Okay.
He's, yeah, all right. Hey, Chad.
Hi. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, hi. So to address Helen's question, it's true, I do spend some time in New York, but my domicile of Wellfleet has never changed. It's always been, that I spend more than 183 days out of the year, which is Mass law to establish or to maintain domicile. I've provided Nancy with proof of voter registration. I'm still a registered voter in Wellfleet. I provided Nancy with income tax returns that establish that my primary residence is 6 Commercial Street. I've also provided Nancy with, I believe, census data or the town address card, whatever it's called, that gets sent out every year. That includes me on that as well. And so that's, I've never actually changed my domicile. And I think that everyone in this call would hopefully agree that, setting a domicile does not necessarily get changed by the fact that you go and work somewhere else for periods of time. Otherwise, I think that probably everyone in the room right now would not be able to maintain their respective domicile. So I think that's all. Is it? I spend time in New York for work when it requires it. I spend time in Wellfleet, and that is not indicative of change of domicile, though.
Okay. John?
Yeah, this is just not anything related to the domicile. I'm just trying to figure out the way this is written. They're just adding somebody to this, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, so I move to approve the application dated December 27th, 2021 for the transfer of shellfish grant license number 85-1-A consisting of 2 acres on Indian Neck from Randy Williams and Charter Williams to Randy Williams, Charter Williams, and
Manja.
Nemanja
Prismonic, not Krismanovic.
Krismanovic.
Is it,
Um,
how do you say that, please, Charter? I mean, Chad?
Nick's on, you can ask him.
Oh, okay. Nick? Oh, Nick.
He goes by Nick for us Americans.
I know from Nick.
Hello,
Howdy.
my real name is Nemanja Krasmanovic.
Oh, check at the end. Thank you, but I got the first one right.
Yes, Helen, you did right. Yes.
I'll
Yes,
second the motion.
it's Krismanovic.
Okay,
Yes.
roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
And I,
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Next one is, I hereby close the hearing for license number 85-1-A. I open the public hearing for license number 14-1 for a transfer from Jason Wiseman, Berta Brunage, and Elizabeth Salen to Jason Wiseman and Elizabeth Salen. Let's see, are there any questions or comments on this one? Okay, so I move to transfer sorry, that's not quite the right wording. I move to approve the application dated January 10th, 2022 for the transfer of shellfish grant license number 14-1, consisting of 1.75 acres in Logie Bay from Jason Wiseman, Berta Brunage, and Elizabeth Salen to Jason Wiseman and Elizabeth Salen.
Second.
Kathleen?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a small correction in your motion.
Okay,
This is not a transfer on this license, it's a renewal.
there's
No,
a second one for a renewal.
I thought you said the first one was going to be postponed.
That was ARC, number 792.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so the motion's been moved and seconded. Is there kind of a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I,
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Sorry, I get thrown off without mic, so. All right, so I moved I closed the public hearing on the transfer of grant license number 14-1. I hereby open the public hearing on the renewal of shellfish grant license number 14-1, consisting of 1.75 acres in Logie Bay for 10 years from for Jason Wiseman and Elizabeth Salen. Are there any questions on this? Okay, so I move to approve the application dated January 10th, 2022 for the renewal of shellfish grant license number 14-1, consisting of 1.75 acres in Logie Bay for 10 years from Jason Wiseman to Jason Wiseman and Elizabeth Salen.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I,
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, I hereby close the public hearing on shellfish grant license number 14-1. And I open the public hearing for extension to shellfish requested by Bradford Morris for extension to grant license number 852-B.
Ellen, second.
There's not a motion for that. That's just opening the hearing.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry, I was distracted.
okay. I have some concerns on this one. So are the other members of the board aware of where this is?
Yes.
No,
No? Okay.
Could I make a little presentation?
Go ahead.
Okay. So if you've seen in your packets, this grant is on Field Point, just a couple of grants down from Shay Murphy and Mike DeBasto. And if you would continue down Field Point, kind of towards Blackfish Creek and Old Wharf Point, it's before Pat Winslow, which are the other three grant extensions that you have already approved on the Hilton Trust parcel. This grant has been operating in its current location since Brad was added to the lease. So Bob Rowell added Brad, I believe it was in 2008, and he showed Brad where the buoys were to be, and that's where Brad put them, and that's where Brad has been operating. When Chris Manula, Deputy Shellfish Constable, went out for his grant inspection this spring, he realized that those points didn't match up with what the Shellfish GIS showed. And so we recommended that he put together a request for a grant extension. Unfortunately, he missed the deadline with the moratorium. He had just gotten his paperwork in and there wasn't enough time for me to advertise it. So he's coming back now with the same request that the Shellfish Department recommended. This grant has been operating for 15 years in the place that it is currently, the extension is being requested for. So there's just a kind of an error of geography, and there was no malfeasance here at all. And we just want to right the situation. We want to correct the situation. There have been, to the best of our knowledge, myself and the harbor master, we went out there twice to evaluate where the buoys were in consideration of the proximity to the channel. There was one buoy that he felt was a little too close to the channel, so he moved that in about 30 feet. And those are the coordinates with which I have provided you tonight. We used a GIS, our GIS consultant, to prepare the map that's in your packets with the table and the coordinates. The Brad shares an upper grant, 852, with Curtis Graham. Curtis Graham has often reported boat interference. His is much higher up in the water column, and he sometimes has had found bags that were slit by a propeller. Brad has never reported such an interaction. His grant is obviously lower down, and so there's a lot more water on top of it. So if you have questions, I'm here to answer them, but I feel very comfortable with the application that Brad put together, with the work that the Shellfish Department did to ascertain that it was in a good place that would not interfere with recreational boating. We worked closely with the harbor master, and I hope the memo referred that on to you, but I'm here for any questions.
So I'm going to share the screen here. This is Google Earth. This is 2012. These marks are the existing, where the grant is on paper existing to, and these are the proposed bounds with the new one. At this time, the activities are pretty much confined to the licensed area. And then
What month was that, Ryan?
that was,
2012?
there's 5, 2013, 3, 2012.
So sometimes, depending on the
There's-
time of year,
there's
people might
5,
not have
yeah.
their,
Nancy,
they
Nancy,
might not have their gear out. You know what I mean? If it's early in the
okay,
season.
so here's 5, 2010. Again, the same pattern. And then in 2000, let's see, here's 2014, comes out further. 2015, a little bit more, but still closer. And then 2016 comes all the way out. So I don't know. I mean, this would establish basically a new line out there. And the other surrounding grants would probably be, or, could justify going further out. And this goes out pretty close to the channel of Blackfish Creek. So here's the southwest bound, and here's the grant on the other side of the creek. This area is becoming really difficult for boaters to navigate. And I think it's, I mean, pictures are pictures. I mean, the satellite photos. I have a hard time seeing that he's been out using this, the entirety of, he's probably been using some of it, but I have a hard time seeing him using the entirety of this in 2008, as you claim. So, yeah. John?
Yeah, well, two questions. One, where is Curtis's grant in relation to this, just so I can see how this might be affected by boats? But number two, how could this have, how could it have been outside of the boundaries for this long and nobody knew it?
Would you like me to answer?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Because no grant inspections were done before I started. No formal grant inspections were ever done. And we have had a GPS only for the past 2 years. So it's going to take a while to just kind of get everything up to speed.
Wasn't there a survey done for the Hilta property? And wouldn't that have turned that up?
Not necessarily.
I mean,
It still doesn't mean that the shellfish department goes out now. Since I started, we've been doing grant inspections every year. And we've been documenting everything with paperwork. So it's, it's going to take us, we've had grants in Wellfleet since the 70s. So it's not going to, get, if you will, cleaned up in a year, but we're working on it. And also, the way that Chris Manula and I spent a lot of time going over this, and it was our idea that Brad asked for the extension. There's that Brad's business was growing. His buoys were out there and his business was growing. And so I
Nancy,
think that could explain part of it.
I can
And the
again
other-
show satellite photos of where the buoys were. They're visible on satellite photos where they were. So,
I guess I'm going to ask you to trust your staff that
I mean,
is out
this
there
is-
day in and day out. And the shellfish constable and the harbor master feel that this is acceptable and taken into consideration. All of
Okay,
the signs that
so
you're talking-
here's the buoy in 2016. And where are we?
So that seems quite close to where he's asking right now.
Yeah, so this is 2000, and let me make this go away. This is 2010-5. Let's see. 5. There's the buoy in 2010. Right there.
You're saying it got.
I'm
moved
not
out.
really sure. I have no guarantee that that's a buoy. I don't know how you can see a buoy from Google Earth.
Respectfully, so here's the buoy, here's a buoy, here's a buoy, here's a buoy.
Kurt has buoys halfway through too.
So,
Can I say something? I want to talk. Okay, I'm talk.
I mean, I like Brad. I'm just,
It's nothing to do.
It's not about like, it's the right thing to do.
Has buoys too.
yeah,
If you look at the map that I provided, that shows that this will now create a line of buoys that it just doesn't, it's been there for 15 years without incident.
it won't create a line of buoys. It goes out further than any of the surrounding grants, Nancy.
No, it will if with Mike DeVastos and Shays. They're not that far down the line.
Here's, I mean, Mike's furthest point in basically comes into line. Here's Mike's right
We
here.
don't have the extensions on this Google Earth. We don't
I
have the
have it.
actual,
So this is it right here,
is it the actual coordinates
pretty much.
loaded up?
It's where this blue comes out to. And again, this extends further south.
Is that the actual coordinates that the select board approved?
I
Or is
haven't,
it just mapping that we did on our own?
it's mapping, but they're really close.
Well, all right.
I mean,
I guess I'm,
they're maybe off by maybe 10 to 15 feet.
You can't.
So. I mean,
does
this,
anyone else have questions for me?
Helen?
Yeah, or to Ryan. Can you go back to what we were looking at before where you can see the equipment set up outside of the surveyed boundaries as found on the map?
Which year?
I think it was the 2008.
2010,
Yeah, yeah. hold
there's
on.
2012,
Yeah,
2013, 2014. That one's pretty clear.
yeah,
A little bit further out.
yes.
and then
So what I'm trying to figure out is how many other people there we go. That's what I want to look at.
Nobody.
Nobody what?
Why don't we allow this old lady to get her very slowly spoken question out? Thank you. So nobody else's setup equipment is that far out. And yet,
Can you,
yeah, Nancy, what?
can you scroll out, Ryan?
Yeah,
And
okay.
can you add in back the boundaries that you had before? With all of the grants?
Yep, it will take a second to load.
Thanks. Okay, now scroll in down on the blue areas. Please. Okay, so there's Mike DeVasto. Now move over.
Oh, wait, Mike
There's
DeVastos.
Shay.
Hold on.
Just,
Mike
it
DeVastos,
happens.
855B.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's Shay next to him, 2007 and 2007 extension.
Blue
Now
area
this-
is the extension.
This is part of the work that the Shellfish Department is undertaking this year. You're gonna have a lot of grant stuff on your docket this year because we're working hard to just get things cleaned up.
Yeah, I mean, these extensions kind of clean up the lines. This extension creates a new, basically an area where there's not a current established line, where there is a pre-existing established line that's been bumped out for this extension.
Well, when you're out there, standing out there and looking down a line of buoys, it looks like they're all in a row. When you're in C2, when you are out on location, it looks like a straight line of buoys out there with where these are currently, because this is where they've been. I navigate in there all the time for water quality with the state. This is actually an area that, for me, because I know all the grant boundaries, is very easy. It's one of the easiest places for me to navigate in the harbor, because on the left-hand side, I have a row of buoys, and on the right-hand side, I have a row of buoys. And I'm not an accomplished mariner. I'm still learning the ropes. I should have said port and starboard, but I'm just saying that, you know, for a novice like me in a Carolina skiff, those buoys guide my way in. And when Will and I were out there, you can tell that it, like, maybe it doesn't look like it on paper, but when you're out there, they look like they're in a line. I'm working really hard to try and clean things up.
John, do you still have your hand up, or can I go to Helen?
You can take it down. I thought it went down automatically.
No, it doesn't. Helen?
Yeah, so is what I'm seeing is what you're saying is if these grant lines, the yellow-orange grant lines here, right? On the right, above 852-B, right? That's Brad's grant, right?
Mhm.
You're saying when you're out there, you see the buoys that would mark the seaward edge of his leasable area in line with the ones to the left and the right, which clearly would then also be incorrect. Otherwise,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm sorry, Helen. I see what you're referring to. So where it says existing,
Yeah.
yes, there's buoys there too. And there's buoys on their neighbors. But what I'm saying is southwest bound and southeast bound, those two line up with Mike DeVasto and Shay's
Oh, yeah.
extension buoys.
yes, but
Okay,
this extension has never existed formally before.
for Brad, correct.
Yeah, and Brad never applied for it before. Is
Because he
that
didn't know he was outside his bounds. As soon as we discovered it, he put in his application.
okay? So let's clean this situation up in my mind, at least. Somebody who's been farming out there for quite a while is applying for an extension. I'm not going to bother my head, because I'm not smart enough, about whether or not his equipment has been out there or not. I'm going to treat it as an extension of an existing area, existing licensed area, right? That's how I'm going to think of it. And the question to my mind is whether or not buoys line up, whether or not it makes it tidier. I don't care about that. If the shellfish constable thinks and the harbor master think, if they both think that it's not going to block vessels, it's not going to be in the way of, the necessarily navigable area. And you guys are into granting extensions here. I would just, in my mind, treat it as such. However, as we all know, I have reservations about these extensions, which has nothing to do with Brad. So I have to think about how I'm going to vote on this. That's how I've tidied it up in my mind, Nancy. And if you think that it's completely off the wall incorrect, please let me know. Not whether you agree with what I may or may not vote with, but if I just consider this to be a normal application for an extension to the Shellfish Department brought to us, and then of course, we don't know whether it's productive or not because it's been formed. It's not like the DMF can go in there and look at it and say, yeah, there's a wild set here, or no, there's no wild set here. So it's a little complicated because of that.
But
Thank
they
you.
will come and survey it.
Yeah,
It's
but
part of what has to happen.
yeah, but there's shellfish being farmed on it now. So we'll never
Oysters.
know what its wild status was.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you for listening to me.
Kathleen?
I don't have any questions, Ryan.
Okay,
I'll put my hand down.
okay. I mean, this gear clearly extends further than any other surrounding gear. It doesn't even look like he's using the areas he's licensed in.
Because they're so high up.
But he has this other one, this grant, you said is also, I mean, that one's clearly in use, and that's even higher up than than 852-B. So, John?
Two questions. One, I'm still curious as to where Curtis's grant is in relation to this, because if both.
Curtis is the farming on 852-B, or 852, right here.
He's had boat hits.
Yep.
There haven't been any on 852B.
I think, I'm not sure when this Google,
This one's 2017.
okay.
All right, so moving that grant, putting an extension there isn't going to probably make a difference one way or the other.
Well,
Obviously, a boat that got into Curtis's grant was way off course anyhow.
the extension's down here. There can't be any extension inland of,
I know, I understand. I'm just curious as to how, where Curtis's problem there fit into all this. The other question I have is, how many other grants in Wellfleet have had this issue with, creeping out beyond their boundaries over time?
it's really common.
Okay. So it isn't necessarily by design, it's just something that happens.
And
Janet,
that's why we do grant inspections now, and that's why we bring our GPS.
Janet,
So Nancy, I'm trying to read all the papers as I listen to everybody. So you would approve this extension?
I would.
Okay, no, that's good for me.
yeah, I disagree with the accuracy of the information being provided by the department. I mean, again, photos, I mean,
Well, if this is still going to be surveyed, you're surveying all of the grants this year, more or less, right? You're resurveying them all.
No, they're not getting resurveyed, but what we're doing, and we have been doing for the past couple of years, is going out with our handheld GPS and making
Right.
sure that buoys are in the correct place. And in fact, sometimes, there have been disputes. So next time you're going to read a new regulation about boundary disputes. We're really beginning the process of cleaning things up. I would say that the majority of grants do not have this problem at all. And Google Earth has been very helpful to the department in that regard. But where they do exist, and where I think that there is a rationale for approving it, I'll bring them to you.
Okay, so even though he's kind of creeped out there, you're still saying it's good. It's all right.
Yeah, because when I
Yeah,
look back
okay.
at Google Earth, he was there. He used areas within that boundary for 15 years. Now, he might not have used the entire area the whole time, but it's clear that he thought he was in the right place.
all right,
And the harbor master was fine with the boat passage?
Yes, he was. And, I brought him back out again last week because I wanted to make absolutely sure that we were making a good decision and a good call here.
so if you're saying 15 years, he would have been out there since 2007 or 2008, when clearly on the photos, he's only been farming that area since, I mean,
2012.
2012, 2013.
This is 2022, right?
Yep.
So.
And only all of it since
18, 19, 20, 21,
2016.
22. Okay, so maybe it's 14 years. I'm sorry.
And he's only been using all of it since 2016, which is 6 years. That these buoys are further out than every other buoy in the area. I mean, these are matters of fact. To have professional staff tell us things that are not correct is not appropriate. John?
I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand back there.
Okay. Joe Aberdale?
Yes, good evening. The Marina Advisory Committee requested that I share the following with you this evening. We have received in recent years numerous complaints regarding safety and navigation in this area. And those concerns have been expressed very strongly. And the bigger picture is requesting a balance between the needs of the shellfish community and the 500 boaters who have permits to use this area. And while it has been said earlier that it's approved to get in and out of the channel, a lot of people are saying it shouldn't be limited to just the ability to get in and out of the channel, that they can no longer do in this area what they used to do, water ski and sail and so forth. And so that word creeping is one that we continually hear and are concerned about for boater safety and navigation. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Nancy, for supplying us with all this excellent material. I have a question. So the area in question here is, let's see, 2/3 of an acre, right?
Thereabouts.
Okay. On the 5-year plan, Brad Morse's licensable area, which he's been getting renewals on and so forth, is specified to be 5.66 acres. Now, if this area that you want, you collectively, the applicant and the Shellfish Department wants to clean up the status of by formally applying for this extension. But if Mr. Morse and the Shellfish Department thought all along that this was part of his licensed area, it would have to be contained within the 5.66 acres.
Where are you getting 5.67?
I'm looking at the 5-year plan
Okay.
that he submitted for 852C. Where is 852C?
That's the new, that's the grant extension that he's requesting. So I'm just looking through the documentation. Hold on.
Yeah. And my point here, though, is if he and everybody else thought that this area that we see the equipment on with the SE southeast bound and the southwest.
No, it's 0.5. Sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry for interrupting, Helen. It's 0.5, and then it's actually a dash. It didn't come through correctly.
Oh yeah, it
And
looks
then
like a dash.
0.6, so it's approximately 1/2 to 2/3 of an acre.
And that's what, okay, and that is what you're telling us 852B is. Is that, what is the acreage for 852B?
1 acre.
Okay, so how many acres has Brad Morse been renewed for again and again over the years?
2.5.
Okay, so where is that half?
It's 852A, which at this point is impossible to farm because it's basically the driveway.
Yeah, right, I see it, that array. So given that an acre is a pretty specific amount of space, a bottom, how is it that this extra part could be considered by anybody out there experienced in, putting their buoys out and how big their areas are? How could this extra amount, which looks to be more than a 1/2 acre, be considered to be within the allowed and licensed area for this licensee? Do you see what I'm saying? How could that have been a misconception?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anybody, like when you're out there, Brad can answer why he didn't realize it. And I don't think when you're out there, you're like, okay, this is an acre.
Yeah, but everybody's
it
got
just-
their buoys out on the corners of their acres.
Yeah.
So 8.8, sorry, 853C, and well, there's a red circular line through the one to the right. They all would have had their buoys on their corners.
That's a good point.
Yeah, well, and so this area where the equipment is clearly beyond that towards, seaward. So that's.
Yeah,
what
I don't know how much, people have come in, looked at the maps, gotten their coordinates in the past. We just sent a crier out, based on what Shellfish Advisory Board suggested. And we gave a link to maps online where people can get their coordinates, put them in their phones. Some people have GPSs, so that when the buoys go out this year, they should be in the right location.
In other words, all those other corners are going to move out too, and people are going to be given.
No, it's just, you have to know. I just don't think that there was any real communication in the past between the Shellfish Department and the grant holders regarding what the boundaries looked like on paper, what the boundaries looked like out there. And so, miscommunications happened.
Okay, thank you for answering all my questions, Ryan. I'm going to make one more statement. Given from what I'm learning here and learned from reading the paperwork you submitted, Nancy, thank you again. I would think that what is being farmed out there by Mr. Morse, by Brad, why is it not moved back onto what is a clearly identified and legitimate space, 852B? In other words, the equipment was put in the wrong place. More was being farmed than was granted. And why can't it be moved back onto the area that has been licensed for his use? So I'm going to leave it at that. That's part of my train of thought here. Thank you.
Okay, I would say that right now, the areas or the surrounding grants are clearly productive, and they're further in. And 852-B is not being farmed to the extent that some of the surrounding ones are. So, some of the other extensions we've granted have been because either they've maxed out their capacity on their pre-existing licensed areas, or that, they do have, areas that are not productive for a variety of reasons. In this case, clearly, the pre-existing licensed area would be productive if it was farmed. And I would want to see that before any extension is granted. I would consider a smaller extension that does not extend for as far out as it currently does. But 852-B is not being heavily farmed, and it's clearly productive, and there's even one well inshore of that being farmed productively. So that's all I'll say on this from me for right now. Tom Segia.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm representing, well, as part of the SAB, the select board asked us to take a look at and give them recommendations for the Hilda property. And I think the most important thing and we had a lot of, as many of you know, we had a lot of the community participate. And I think the most important thing here was that we changed the process on how we look at these extensions. And the process now has the harbor master included. So now the boating community has a say in some of these in the extension process, which I think is important. The second thing, I have a boat on Blackfish Creek, and I have no problem leaving the harbor, leaving Blackfish, getting into the harbor. You got to go slow. You got tons of other boaters out there, kayakers mainly. So you go slow. All the buoys Mr. Chair, I believe are in line. And go along with the curvature of Field Point. I think Joe and the team are putting together green and red buoys for next year, and I think that will be a benefit to the boating community. Also, when we looked at the Hilda property and we looked at numerous maps that Nancy showed, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 nights we went through this. And I think the most important thing, we want to use what we bought. We want to use as most of the property that we purchased, that the town purchased. So that was kind of our thought process, and that's why we said, I think it was our second motion was to lift the moratorium, so we get an idea of the extensions, who needed extensions, and what whether or not the process works. That's all I have, Ryan.
Okay, John?
Yeah, just to be clear, through you to Nancy, were the buoys in the wrong place for 852B? Or were they in the right? And he was
Say
just
that again,
farming.
John?
Were the buoys, the outer buoys for 852B, were they in the right place and he was just farming beyond them, or were they located incorrectly?
No, those I believe were correct. I'd have to ask Chris again.
Well,
But even no, we were out there this week and they were in the right spot last week.
No, I did not.
Okay, that's
Okay, David
Tomatis.
Stamatis, sorry.
Easy for you to say. Thank you. Just a couple of comments with regard to whether you do decide or do not decide to issue the extension here. The Marina Advisory Committee, as Joe had alluded to, has really done their due diligence in listening to other boaters regarding the safe navigation throughout. And, we gleaned a lot of positivity with a lot of the meetings that we've had with Nancy and the harbor master. Nancy, we spoke at one meeting back, I think in November or October, about how important it was to have a balance that, seems to be creeping towards an imbalance when it comes to what we're asking for, I think, regards to safety and navigation and reasonableness. And in this situation, I go back almost 60 years of boating in Wellfleet. And in that time, it's just gotten worse and worse over there. And I certainly understand many people can navigate through that because they know what's going on. But some people don't. And there are accidents and they may never get reported, but there are. And these are the kind of things we have to consider. That's all I want to say.
Okay, Charter Williams.
I just wanted to chime in here because I stayed on after our hearing, and I think that what's important here is that as the photograph in front of us shows, the town bought this Hilda property for one specific reason, and it was for it to be utilized as a town resource. And so for Brad to want to expand, or not even expand, just to be able to set the boundaries in a way that reflect the way that he's been utilizing the space previously, I don't think he should be held back from doing that. That area is really subject to accretion. The sand is shifting so much there, and I think this was already stated by Nancy that the higher land there, the higher acres are much drier than they probably were in the past. And this is something that's going to be happening more as climate change progresses. That's not only people think of rising seas, but also it's more accretion because storms are stronger and everything. So, for us to have this extra space here as a town resource that we spent millions of dollars on and not utilize it, or let someone that's been a member of the fishing community in the town for decades and not be able to utilize it properly is really, I think, a waste. Because while as much as I respect the boating community, I think that they have thousands of acres in the harbor with which to have their pastime and enjoy themselves on their boats and do whatever it is they want to do. This is a set finite resource. And as soon as you hit that little border there that delineates the Hilda property, you can't go beyond that. That's the extent of the resource. And there's not, so the creep, the concept of creep that someone brought up, Mr. Aberdale brought up, is that, you know, we can't creep beyond this extent, and because this is the resource, and this is why the town spent all that money on the resource. And so I think for it to be sitting there and a request to be brought by a member of the community that's been using it properly and productively for years, for it not to be granted is really, it's a shame. And I think that as far as the productivity of the existing acreage that he has there, when you look at that, I mean, Ryan commented, or Selectman Curley commented that it's not being used productively, but this is a static photo from, I think the date says April 14th, 2017. So I think that no matter where you are, any photo that's coming from Google Earth is going to be a static image. It doesn't really properly reflect what Brad is using out there, which acreage, whether 852 is packed with racks or 852B has half of it covered with racks or ground or bottom grow out or whatever it might be. I think that it's not fair to deem whether or not this should be approved or not based on a static photo that's 5 years old, or that's 4 years old or 10 years old. And I think the more important part is that a member of the community that's been utilizing is requesting to be utilizing it on an official basis and just moving his bounds. So that's, I don't have a dog in this fight, but that's my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, I would say that I can show multiple photos with the same pattern of use. But Mike,
May I
sorry,
come up to fact, please?
okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Chad, respectfully, if somebody wants to apply to have a grant outside of the 254 acres that the town now owns, you know, what's seaward there is owned by the Commonwealth. You can have a grant in on bottom owned by the Commonwealth. So we don't have to, at any point anywhere in the harbor, stay within, property owned by the town or anybody else. Thank you.
Mike,
Yeah, I'm just speaking. Oh, am I muted? No.
no,
I'm speaking on my own behalf, not as a member of the select board in this public hearing. I just want to clarify that I'm speaking on my own behalf and my own interest. But I just wanted to respond to the balanced use of the harbor. There's 11,647 acres in Wellfleet Harbor and Bayment. 2% of that is used for aquaculture. The total acreage in the harbor, the total acreage licensed somewhere around 6% of the intertidal area, which is 3,815 acres. So the idea that there's not a balanced use of the harbor, I don't think is a legitimate argument, considering that close to 98% of the harbor does not have any aquaculture on it, and 94% of the intertidal area does not have any aquaculture on it. And those are based on the numbers from the Harbor Management Plan and the Cape Cod Commission as far as our total area. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out is that, just because you don't see racks on or gear on there, I know Brad, when I started farming, was growing everything on the ground without any gear, like everything. He might have had cages that he was basically putting oysters in as he picked them off the bottom. But and I know that has changed, and we've had conversations about growing stuff with rack and bag and stuff like that in the past. So I just don't know how clearly that reflects what's going on the bottom crop, what's being grown on the ground. And we had some serious ice events and overwintering events that decimated everything. It ripped everybody's markers out. I mean, it was like a traffic jam of ice that you wouldn't recognize the area out there after the ice events. So prior to the very recently getting translated GPS, I mean, nobody was checking it with GPS. It was all like, okay, I think your buoy's over here. You walk 250 feet, literally like, meets and bounds or whatever. And, sometimes there's steel posts from the 80s that, are out there that are, markers or maybe they were markers or you know, who knows what people were doing in 1980, 1990. It's hard to say. So, but I just wanted to throw that out there that, you know, you can see the racks and bags from a satellite, but you can't really see what's grown on the ground.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I think it'd be appropriate at this point to hear from Brad. And you know, perhaps he could answer some of these questions as to the productivity aspect and how he came to move out past the buoys. You know, we're all speculating and getting the answers for different people, but he's the one who has the dog in the fight. I think we should hear from him.
Brad, would you care to respond?
Yeah, good evening. You know, there's a lot that goes on out there. And if you look over at where they've done that replenishment or they've brought replenishment in, all along that beach wall, they've been dumping, since I've been there, as long as I can remember, they've been bringing tractor load of tractor load of tractor load of unnative sand into that area. And then it blows northwest all year, down that whole beach, kills all the grass, destroys the native habitat, makes it impossible for shellfish to grow. And then nobody does anything about it. They just, oh, you know, the state says they can't put those rocks for another 75 feet up there. And it's an aberration of the harbor. It's destruction of the Blackfish Creek that goes on continuously. So I have a spot there that is horrific in the winter and northwest wind. And I have been trying to keep my stuff alive in the summer because it gets so hot on that sandbar that's been built up over time. So the only way I can keep my stuff out of Vibrio and alive and have a ground crop is what I've been doing. And I've been using that area for, 14 years that I've been there. And I haven't, it hasn't been always the same. And there's been a lot of, I went in 2011 or 12, I went to the town hall to get a map of my grant. And they couldn't find one that actually showed the grant. And Beth Berrio gave me a map that showed I had a ½ acre out past John Connors. And there was a metal pipe in the ground there at the time. And I went off that. And that's where I was after that. So that was around 12 or 13. I started using that aspect of it because I wasn't sure of the bounds. And I have to tell you, this is like probably one of the hardest jobs that a person can do to make a living. Now, I have nothing against other use of the harbor, and I've never had a boat strike there. And I really don't think it matters what has happened in the past. I need this extension. End of story. Now it's either you give me the extension or you don't give me the extension, fine. But that's all this is about, because it doesn't really matter what's happened before. We need to move forward here. And, this whole meeting, I can't even be unmuted. And we're in a bizarre world right now. And a lot of people are at the breaking point, the way our democracy has crumbled, and that everybody has to go to a computer screen to do a public hearing. And it feels like it's a dictatorship where, if you talk against the orthodoxy, I'm going to just mute you. You can't say, you can't say what you want to say when you want to say it. Like at a meeting, I guess it does get unruly. And I get that. I get how life is. I get how dicey it is. And I get how it's not always this or that. It's this and that. And if you want something clean, it's not going to happen here. But my life is on that grant and I need that extension. And,
Yeah.
that's all I got to say about that. And you know what? I couldn't get my video to work. So you could have seen my face tonight, except were on Zoom and I couldn't get my video to work. It said I could have had to quit the whole meeting and go to settings again, and I could have had my video going again, but I wanted to be here and speak. And I don't know if that answers the questions about what's going on out there, but if you could help me with that replenishment issue. You know,
Could
Yeah.
I,
1 second, John. Tom Sigia, when is the next SAV meeting?
Next SAB is March 10th.
Okay. So what I would actually like to do is to refer it to the SAB. I don't know if the other board members would feel, yeah.
So Ryan, can I say something?
Yep.
So I'm the member of the board that really knows the least about shell fishing, although I certainly am learning all the time. And I've been sitting here going, well, what's really going on? What's this? And I always honor what Nancy's saying. And what Brad just said made all the sense in the world, is that I always hear the shifting sand, and I'm looking at this picture, and you do see shifting sands and water. So I think we've heard enough. I totally get the boating people wanting more boating space. This is such a hard, this is becoming such a difficult thing in our town, and it shouldn't be. So I would actually like to move to approve the application dated January 26, 2022 for a grant extension to be numbered 85 to 852C to Shellfish Grant License 852B, consisting of approximately 2/3 of an acre on Field Point from Brad Morse of Wellfleet, Massachusetts.
Okay, so for discussion,
Is there a second?
is there a second?
I had a question before I went
Okay.
on anything.
Go ahead, Helen.
And I understand what Janet just said. I have a question through you to Brad. Brad, are you able to answer, or you're muted?
No, I'm
he's
here.
muted.
I'm here, yeah.
Good. So why is it, I think you went over some of this just now when you spoke, and thank you for clarifying a number of things. But why is it that you're not set up on 852B as much as you are further out
It's
seaward?
all, Helen, it's all ground stock there. And if you put the racks in there, it destroys the
Okay.
ground stock. And I have a,
How much, hold on, so about how much of that acre
all
do
of
you
it.
have under cultivation?
All of it.
852B, all of it.
All of it.
Okay, so that really clarifies
One thing
something.
more I wanted to say.
Yeah.
We couldn't apply for extensions when Hilda wasn't owned by the town, which
Yeah.
was a huge thing to me because I would have gone for extension long ago. The other point is that the deed for Hilda reads to mean low water on a zero tide. And that's as far as I'm going there. I'm right there with the extension. I'm at mean low water on a zero tide.
Ryan,
Yep.
but to restate, Brad, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're in Hilta or out of Hilta, because what's seaward is the Commonwealth. So you're cool wherever you are in terms of that. You don't have to stay in Hilta.
Yeah.
You just have to be approved for wherever your leasable area is in the ways that we're all familiar with. So I wouldn't mind hearing what the SAB has to say about this, and with apologies to Mr. Morse, because he's been waiting. You know, we had the moratorium. We are considering extensions. That's something that the board has with, you know, a recommendation from the SAB already. And this one looks good to me at this point, having gotten a whole lot of necessary information, but I'd like to hear the SAB discuss it, given that they're going to be meeting within 2 weeks. I don't know what the will of the rest of us is, but that's where I am. Thank you.
So I would say that some of what Brad said helps me, that the pre-existing licensed area is being fully utilized, that is helpful. I still think that we best to refer it to the SAB, and then continue this hearing until the 22nd, and have the SAB issue recommendations, if that's helpful. Tom, is that something that the SAB could do?
Yes, Ryan, I can add it to the agenda.
Okay. The other members of the board, John?
Yeah, Brad raised something that actually Curtis Graham had raised with me a little while back. And it sounds like something, even though it may not be directly related to the signing off on this license, I think it does have a lot to do with this in general, and that is the importation of the sand. This raises some serious issues that I think needs to be addressed with some urgency, because we don't know what's in that sand. Curtis mentioned the possibility that maybe some of this clam disease that we were talking about at the last hearing might be related to it. And as Brad pointed out, it's washing around and affecting grants. I think this is something we don't need to be sweeping under the rug any longer.
Yeah, so with Mike's, he was impacted as well. And that there had been over a foot of accretion to different sections of his licensed area as well.
As to the navigation issue, being a boater myself and a charter sailboat operator, I can't honestly say I've had any real difficulty in Blackfish Creek as long as I watch my P's and Q's, and with the improved buoyage that we're talking about for the coming season, I don't see that as being the central issue here myself. I don't mean to work at cross purposes to the MAC or anything like that, and these are definitely things we need to think about. But the key thing is, is this grant? Do we deal with this today, or are we going to? I'd like to hear how Brad feels about putting this on the SAB until we hear from them on the 22nd.
Thanks, John. This is how Discord really works. And that area out there is like the Sahara Desert. I need people that, if they were out there, they could get a better feeling of what it's like. If you go outside where if you go right outside where I'm asking for the extension, there is mounds of sand and sandbars. Like it is, if you go out there on a moon tide, it is not conducive to growing shellfish. Wild shellfish do not grow there. They cannot grow there. And it is only good for what I do with it, with rack and bags. And I grow a lot of oysters. I grow several 100,000 oysters a year there. And I do well at it because I know how to deal with it now. And I've been able to get it down. And I was going broke for years. I almost quit, but I managed to get it done. And I don't think this has to go to SAB. It's not like I'm asking for the moon. It's like a half an acre. And, if Mike says, there's 98% of the harbor, we just spent millions of dollars dredging a channel. Like Blackfish Creek is not a navigatable channel. That doesn't mean I don't think people should use it for boating. I think they should. And I don't think if you go in there, anything above 2 hours where I am, you have plenty of room you could go right over my buoys after 2 hours after low on most tides, especially smaller tides. Sorry, I'm going on and on. I could talk the balls out of a bowling alley. Sorry.
Okay, Nancy?
Thank you. Couple of things, just by a point of information for for John Wolf and others who are interested, the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Conservation Commission will be meeting at some point, hopefully this spring, to talk about the issues around beach renourishment. So stay tuned to the criers as we'll be letting people know. I am tuning into Conservation Commission meetings that deal with beach renourishment and speaking out for them. In fact, we had one last week and Curtis Graham was also present. I try and let people who are affected in that area know about them. The MEPA review that is going to take place with moving the 5 Deepwater Indian Neck grants in and the 3 other extensions, they will only do it when everything is done together. So I would like to be able to have Brad's extension join that group so that it can go through together at once. And we've already had one meeting with the Deepwater Indian Neck grant holders, and we have to do one application. So I would like to try and get this to be part of it. And I just wasn't sure if I had heard, did anybody end up seconding Janet's motion?
No. I have one more question that isn't in your memorandum.
I had my hand up first, okay?
I apologize.
So I just want to say, I don't see any point in sending this to the SAB and then us voting on it 2 weeks after that. We've really heard everything. Tom Siggy, who's on the SAB, didn't have any hesitation in this or any problem with it. Our shellfish advisor, our shellfish constable doesn't. I get what people are saying, but I really think that this extension should be approved. And I made a motion. I guess you guys don't want to do it, but there's no reason for us to talk about it if you're all just going to send it to the SAB. It's either vote on it or whatever. Let's vote or not. You know, we've said everything, and Brad has presented a very good case.
One more piece of information question through you to Nancy. Nancy, did the abutter say okay to this? Remember, that's in our regulation now.
Yeah, I did not do an abutters because it doesn't, they're not abutting anybody out there on either side.
Well,
It's not going in front of anybody
not,
else's
yeah.
grant, so I didn't do that.
okay, I would have considered 853C and 86, whatever it is over there on the right.
Nope.
To be abutters because they share corners, but never mind. Thank you for
What-
answering that.
What would a butter be in that case?
I just said.
Brad. Because I didn't consider it, but if you want me to in the future, I certainly will.
Joe Aberdale, and then we really need to decide what we're doing here tonight. So, and Brad as well, he has his hand up. So I'll go to the applicant as well. Joe?
Yeah, I did not have my hand up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brad? Oh, you're muted again.
Hi, it's actually Diane. I just wanted to say, I'm also on the grant. I just wanted to say for Helen, for abutters, John Connors was on a text with Tom and I today. He couldn't make it to this meeting, but I don't think he would have any problem. He's in support of it. And David Payne is on the other side. So if you're thinking abutters on the left and the right, and Curtis obviously is in support of it. So I think that nails the abutters question. And then I just wanted to add to boating. I beach, as I can see some people on this Zoom also do, at high tide on that beach. And there's at least 2 people that have boats moored on that beach that boat and water ski almost every single day. I don't know who that man is, but he is a diehard boater in that area. And he boats all around Blackfish Creek and all around those grants every single day. And I don't think there's ever been a summer day without kayakers, jet skis. So there are people using that area pretty prolifically. So I'm not thinking that's a big concern. And then I'd just like to add, separate from the grant, everything Nancy's saying and other people are saying about that erosion thing. You know, Geo 101 in college, if they don't finish off those rocks, that area is going to continue to erode. Like all the weird little plans they have out there, they're not going to work. It's just simple geology. So all that stuff, that dune is going to continue to go, smothering the turtles, other grants, shellfish, bringing in disease. Like they have to finish out those rocks, and they have to apply to the state to do that in order to save the boating and the shellfish and the turtles and whatnot. So that's a side issue, but I just had to bring up that little thing. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess I'm just gonna go around to the board and see where we are.
Well, I'm for it.
Yeah, for me, I would prefer to see the markers moved in a little. But I understand the necessity of the extension. So I would actually vote in favor, even though I have some reservations about how far south it goes. Helen? Where are you?
I want to hear what John has to say first.
Okay, John?
I'm just going to say I'm going to second Janet's motion at this point.
Okay.
So how do you feel about it?
I have reservations too, but I think Brad has made his case well, and I think all other considerations included, including the boating aspect, I'm comfortable with it.
Yep. And Brad, stick around for the COVID-19 because the in-person meetings probably is going to come up then as well. So,
Can't wait.
so John, can you second the motion?
Yes, I will second.
You did.
Okay. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for a really productive and informative discussion tonight. I learned some things. I think people made some really good points, and I really appreciate this forum for discussing these issues. And thank you for your trust in me.
Tom Sajia has his
Yep.
hand up.
I'm trying to get to him. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you don't need the SAB to
No.
comment on this. All right, that's all I have.
Okay.
Also, if I could just say one more thing, I have to go to FinCom and present my
Yep.
budget, and I will be back.
Okay, John?
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want us to lose sight of obviously this is something for future discussion, but the issue of the sand, I think, is something we need to tackle.
Yeah, I've made multiple comments on it to the Conservation Commission at this time. I'm sure they're tired of hearing from me on it. Okay, so with that, I close the hearing on the grant extension to be number 852-C. And we are on to COVID-19 updates and recommendations. So the opening of town buildings. Currently, we are on a reduced number of hours that the buildings are open to the public, and I would like to move that the public, Wellfleet's public offices would be opened on a for normal business hours. Is there any discussion on that?
Helen, second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Helen?
Well, other people have their hands up.
Okay, John?
Oh, I guess I keep forgetting to take it down. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I mean, sometimes Zoom recognizes or takes it down and sometimes it doesn't, so.
Yeah, notice
Mike?
And sometimes I take it down for you.
Yeah, I think it's just time to open the building back up. I mean, I think we've been through a large surge, and the trajectory of, cases is downward. and we have a highly vaccinated population. And I think at this point, it'd be prudent, to move things back. I also, I tend to want to leave these decisions mostly up to the Board of Health, just because I feel like public health policy is out of my realm in a way. Like I feel comfortable commenting on it, but not necessarily setting health policy. Obviously sometimes we have been put in the uncomfortable position to do that, but I would also recommend just sort of moving authority to make these decisions back to the Board of Health.
Okay, Helen?
Yeah. Of course, staff can wear masks. We're still in flu season. The air is still dry, although it's getting moister, it's getting warmer. And people go away for vacations, and when they come back, they're very often infected. But it's getting down to being like a bad flu at this point, which is still not good for someone like me, but I can wear a mask. What interests me, and this is relevant in terms of opening town hall, is what Suzanne Grout Thomas said about the council, her building, that they have those air exchange purifiers. I can't remember what the actual piece of equipment is called, but depending on how much they cost and so forth. And Charlie isn't here, is he? He's still at FinCom.
Yeah, he's still at FinCom.
Yeah, I think that it might be something we could spend a few nickels on, just to make the staff's workplace be safer, and make it so that if people go into town hall, they also feel safer, because it's real.
right.
Not going to have the open windows. So I would be up for opening it, but given that maybe some precautions could be taken.
So the motion was, which was seconded, was to open the town offices for normal business hours, or regular business hours. And that's what we need to vote on right now. That's the motion.
Michael, aye.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be up, he hasn't asked for roll call. I wouldn't be up for it unless there were some additional precautions taken.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, aye.
Brian, I.
It's just opening it up, so I'm going to say nay.
People can still wear masks.
Yeah.
You know, they can still keep up the barriers and,
Okay, Hill and I, but let's look into giving them some air purifiers, because they really do work.
Yeah,
Thank
fine.
you.
Okay, so motion carries 5-0. The select board also has a for town buildings requires masking, and I personally don't want to lift it for town buildings at this point yet. Mike, you have your hand up?
I don't yet. I'll wait to hear what everybody else says, and then I'll speak.
Yep. And this would just be for just the town offices. That's separate than the townwide.
All right.
Helen?
I agree with you, Ryan. Let's just wait till the middle of March or the beginning of March. And let's also look at what our numbers are then.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
with you.
part of my thinking is also that I don't want key staff out, potentially out
Yeah,
right now. Janet?
So I would like to hear from the Board of Health. So that'll take a week. And I think you can leave it up to the individuals. I've been, many people are eating out, they're traveling, they're going skiing,
So this is specific to town.
just to town
office.
hall.
Yeah.
Leave it up to the staff. If they want to say, please wear a mask before you come in my office. Yeah. And
No.
if they don't, they don't, but leave it up to the staff.
Okay. So, all right, so we'll take no action unless somebody cares to make a motion on.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yep.
Rebecca has her hand up.
The Board of Health actually lifted their mask mandate for people.
Yep.
I don't know if you knew that, but I just want to give you a heads up.
Yeah, that the townwide is next. This is just specific to town offices. So,
Well, how does Rebecca feel? And she's right there. Charlie's not here, but
Mike,
I just think that this is not the same pandemic as it was. And I think that, a mask advisory, I think that we should probably leave it up to the town administrator if he wants to require masking of town employees or the Board of Health, I guess. But I don't feel comfortable still requiring masking. I think it should be an advisory at this point. I just think, we've got highly vaccinated population and the ability to get booster shots. The Omicron variant is virtually uninhibited by anything but an N95 mask. So expecting staff to wear N95s all day is, a heavy lift if they're vaccinated and boosted and don't feel like it's a risk to them. And if they do feel it is, they're still going to have to wear a KN95 mask. And the reality is when you go out in the world, it's mixed. I mean, people are wearing them or not wearing them. And I think that, we're at a point where our town buildings can reflect the businesses in the town. And if we're lifting the mask mandate, which I think we should, and still issuing an advisory for those who are unvaccinated, and recommending, N95 masks or KN95 masks. But I think it's kind of become, we're just not in the same pandemic that we were. I believe this thing's going towards an endemic phase, but also the risk is lower, and not the risk of contraction, but the risk is lower in the general population because of vaccination and because it does seem to be somewhat milder, particularly if you're vaccinated. And the fact that, cloth masks and surgical masks really under long durations, I don't think are very effective against this variant. So I think building by building, just like we allow our businesses to decide if they want to have a mask mandate in their building, in their business, we should probably consider like maybe the COA wants to continue to do that because of the population there. I don't really know. And I again, feel that this is really, public health policy falls on the Board of Health. And I don't feel entirely comfortable being a politician and making these decisions. But that's where I feel right now. I just think that, things have changed and we need to adapt and move forward. And, if things change again, we might have to adapt again. But right now, I think if you look at, everywhere else you go around town, outside of town, out of state, I was recently in Vermont, and, I was just at J Peak, a ski resort, says like, when you go in there, they strongly recommend people wearing masks and the staff wears masks, but a lot of them are cloth masks, and they had a huge outbreak there, at the same time we had our outbreak. And I just don't know that, it's accomplishing the goal and that it's worth it's worth continuing to put this.
Mike, you're gonna have to wrap up.
Sorry.
So Suzanne?
Yes, thank you. As a not only a department head, but someone who's responsible for a building and the people in that building, I would like to recommend to the select board that you strongly consider lifting the mask mandate, even in town buildings. Those of us who want to will continue to wear masks, and it will reduce the need for staff to be the mask police. After 2.5 years of a pandemic, if you don't understand why you should mask or why you don't need to mask, then there's nothing that we can tell anyone. And I will tell you that the user group in my building, the big room does have the air scrubbers in it. Our offices and the hallway do not. And we have been open to the general public 5 days a week, regular hours, since June of 2020. And we don't have large gatherings, but we have been open to the public. The only building that right now is closed more than it's open is Town Hall. And if they individually, as a building, decide they're going to wear masks all the time, that's their decision. But I think personal responsibility and personal decision-making need to be emphasized at this point. Thank you.
Okay, so would anybody care to advance motion?
I move to lift the mask mandate in town buildings and issue a mask advisory for those who are unvaccinated or at high risk.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Michael, I.
John?
I just said John, I.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Brian, I guess.
Helen, let's look into getting some air purifiers for town hall.
Okay, so onto mask mandate. I think this is a town-wide mask mandate. I think it's time to lift it entirely. And just, yeah, the Board of Health has their mask advisory. I don't think that we necessarily need to issue our own at this point. So the Board of Health has a mask advisory, Helen.
No, I heard you.
Yep.
Can you recognize me? Yes?
Yep, go ahead.
I thought that, remember, we had a joint meeting. And one of the things that was decided in the joint meeting, I'm not remembering the exact words, but there was a motion to this effect, and we voted on it, was that we couldn't switch back, lift the town-wide mandate unless we both agreed to it. So are you saying that we can do it at our meeting and they did it at their meeting?
They did it at their meeting. They were supposed to come to one of our meetings so that we could do it at the same time. But they did it at their meeting last week at the end of.
So our motion should include reference to the fact that we're doing it in conjunction with them.
No, we don't have to do that. We can just say that we lift the mask mandate. So, Mike?
I move to lift the mask mandate.
The townwide mask mandate.
The
Second.
townwide mask mandate in the town of Wellfleet.
Second.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So any other COVID updates and recommendations? So in our schedule, as it's posted, we will be resuming in-person meetings on April 15th. And I talked to Charlie, he's rejoined us as well. I talked to Charlie about when the upgrades to the media upgrades that will enable hybrid meetings will be ready. And it was 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. And that kind of lines up with the April 15th timeline for our meetings. I do think there is a benefit for, having in-person meetings, especially for those that, there's definitely a segment of the population that struggles. And we need to take them into account as well. That said, the legislation that was passed recently allows entirely remote meetings to be continued into July currently, I believe. But my intention is to start holding in-person meetings in April. Mike, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So when we return to in-person, there'll be hybrid meetings.
Yes.
And I'm just for clarification, let's say one of us is, the one thing that's been good about this is no matter where you are, you can continue to make the meetings on time and whatever. Will select board members all have to be in person, or will just a quorum have to be in person? Do we know that?
Just a quorum is required to be in person.
Okay, so there could be someone who is just out of state participating remotely.
Yeah, or,
Okay.
two people. Obviously, it'd be best to know ahead of time.
Sure.
So that, we have a quorum in person.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to see if that would be the case.
Yeah.
because-
And they will be hybrid meetings, which, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why that is a good way to go as well. Helen?
I would really like to continue to Zoom because there are just as many people who will find it more difficult to go to the in-person meetings.
They can still go to the hybrid.
We're doing the hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, hybrid meetings, the people that are on screen, first of all, the places you can do that are limited in town, and they're going to be, we have a lot of different committees. So what we're doing here is, this should be a vote of the whole board as to whether we want to do this or to simply take it as long as we can do it into July. I like in-person meetings. I've done them for years, but I also find that the Zoom meetings are enormously freeing and efficient. And for people with kids and for people with, situations where it's more convenient and safer for them to be at home, I really think we should allow it as long as it can, go on.
So they would still be able to join our meetings. Right now, they're the two, as Charlie's updated the board, the two rooms that are being outfitted are, we had a whole agenda item on this last week, is the COA meeting room, and then the meeting room in town hall. And, boards and committees are just gonna have to schedule, when rooms are available, but John?
Yeah, I might have missed something, but as a board member, did you say that we would all be required to be at the in-person meetings, or could we also attend through Zoom?
Just a quorum. So 3 of us would have to be present.
Okay, because I have to say I've gotten spoiled, since I am still working. It's nice to be able to attend, without having to drive back to the house or, drive into town necessarily, if I get stuck on the job or something.
Yep. Okay. Is there any other discussion on this for right now?
Well, let's make a motion as to whether we want to do this or not.
Okay, do you want to make the motion, Helen?
Sure, let me give it a try. I'm going to do it the way I would like it, with respect for other people's preferences. I move that we continue to meet virtually on Zoom until the July, what is the day? What was the date? July
I'm
what?
not sure.
for the longest possible time allowed by the state.
Okay,
Want me to say that again?
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. I do not support that. I think we really need to
don't-
meet the needs of our citizens.
I agree.
You know, the people that can join the meeting remotely still can. We still have that flexibility, but there are also the people that can't join remotely for various reasons, and we need to meet their needs. So. But the motion's been made and seconded, so can I have a roll call vote?
Can I just make a comment on
Yep.
this? I guess I'm a little bit divided. I'm a little split on here. There's a certain convenience that is difficult to let go of, to be able to, meet remotely as a board. And I do think that I do remember meeting in person, as long ago as that was, and how many times we met in open rooms with no one in there or one or two people. We have never had that on this. And so I know that, we'll still be able to have these hybrid, that it will be hybrid. And so in the end, I support that, but I do not think that we lose very much meeting remotely, despite the sort of push by people to go back to something that we did before. I think that, Zoom has been a positive thing, where I don't think we've really lost anything or the ability for people to actually join our meetings, considering you can call in. I know we've had much more participation over the last 2 years in our meetings than I've seen prior to that on the board, and even attending select board meetings in the past. Obviously, sometimes there's a real controversial issue, the room packs up, but a lot of times we don't have people tuning in here 9:30 at night, doing that. So I don't think we've lost anything doing this. I think it's been good in a lot of ways, but I understand the desire to move back to in-person and hybrid. But I would vote in favor of continuing this until the state deadline, personally.
May I add something that hasn't been said, Ryan, please?
Go
Whatever
ahead.
happened to yes or no?
Thank you, Ryan. The thing I'm really going to miss is seeing all your faces. Because if we're sitting at a table, we don't look at each other when we're talking. When one of us is talking on a Zoom meeting, I look at that person on my screen. It makes a huge difference.
I look at you all the time, Helen, at the meetings.
Yeah.
We meet.
Well, hold on a minute. It's hard doing it from the side. I've been meeting in public meetings longer than any of you, and I like them too. But
Okay, Helen.
let me finish, Ryan. This is important.
Soon
When
enough, you're
we're
gonna find
voting
out
with
drawbacks
hybrid
on
meetings,
Zoom.
when we're voting in hybrid meetings, if I'm coming in on a Zoom, and I'm going to be doing that as much as it's possible, I will not be able to see the members of the board who are actually in the meeting.
No, you'll be able
Yes,
to
you
see
will.
them, Helen.
How?
Right next to each other.
No, I mean,
On it-
if you're
on the
joining
video.
remotely, you'll have a similar screen as what's on right now. You'll
Yes,
have
but you won't if
No,
you're
no,
in the
no,
room.
yes, we will.
Yes.
Please vote on this.
Yeah, I mean, Helen, respectfully, I think you need to talk.
Don't tell me what I should do, Ryan. I
Okay,
don't do that with
well, I think you need to talk to somebody about what the hybrid setup is going to look at like.
But I've
because
been in hybrid setups.
I
don't
mean,
think so.
I don't think so, Helen, but.
Excuse me, Mr.
yep.
Chair, it's the police chief.
Yep,
Thank you.
Chief Hurley.
It's getting almost near 8:30 at night, and in all
Yep.
due respect, we sit here night after night, month after month for 3, 4, 4.5 hours. Can we please get the meeting going, please?
Yep. So the motion's been made to basically not have any hybrid meetings. So I guess I need a roll call vote on that.
Janet, no.
John, no.
Ryan, no.
I changed my mind, no.
Okay.
Helen, yay.
Okay, I move to resume or to start hybrid meetings sometime in April, based on when the rooms are retrofitted, or when the,
Second,
okay.
yep.
Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, I.
Okay.
Helen, nay.
Okay, and at this point, we have a financial forecast. So Charlie, if you can be brief, and Helen, if you start going out of the bounds of the discussion, or you're being cut off by the chair, I've made multiple warnings at this point. So you might find out what some of the drawbacks are with Zoom. So just a warning.
Mr. Chair, if
Yep.
I, just on the last agenda item, I did, through the chair, send out an email from Greg Corbo from Town Council.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And if I could just ask the board, and I
Yep.
think it would fit under that agenda item. This is where the town of Brewster has asked for a legal opinion relative to the mask issue at Nauset Regional School District. Now, Town Council represents Brewster, Eastham, and Wellfleet, and so he's asking for permission to serve in that capacity, and he will share that opinion with us. So I think it would have value to Wellfleet as well.
Okay, so I actually have a motion.
Oh, thanks.
For
Sorry.
that. So thank you for reminding me. So I move that the Wellfleet Select Board consents to KP Law representing the towns or the town of Wellfleet, notwithstanding the firm also serving as counsel to the towns of Eastham and Brewster relative to Nauset Public School System in regards to COVID-19 and masking and policies, rules, and regulations related thereto.
Second,
Roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, sorry, Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. So financial forecast.
Yes, I can be quite quick, I believe. This is draft number 3, dated 2/17/22. And I think the only thing that I would like to call to your attention on relative to what I've talked to you about in the past, I'll update this for every meeting. But on page 2, if you looked at the town budget for FY23, it's at the top of page 2. It's estimated expenditures, town and school operating budget. It's down almost $300,000. And that's because the school budgets, the elementary school budget, the Nauset Regional School budget, and the Cape Cod Tech School budget are all decreased over the current fiscal year appropriations. And it's because our enrollment's down. So it's not the greatest thing in the world. But in light of the deficit that we're dealing with, it does help us. So if you go down to the bottom of page 2, when I had like a $850,000 operating budget deficit, you can see that that now is down to $586,000. So, you'll see this document evolving every single week as I get new numbers.
Where's that?
The capital budget stays, this deficit stays the same as that $1,360,000. And I think that's what we're about to attack is, can we reduce and defer requests on the capital side to start to minimize the impact on the override for the spring. So.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none. To item 6, the plastic beverage bottle warrant article, I would actually like to pull the article. So like as drafted, it would affect a whole range of different containers, including such staples as milk. You wouldn't be able to buy milk in less than a gallon. as drafted. So I'd like to pull the article from the warrant.
Second.
Okay.
Discussion.
Yep, go ahead, Helen.
I agree with that because it's one thing that gets recycled in an efficient way, at least at our transfer station. Thank you.
Okay, so so I guess would the motion actually be to rescind the insertion?
We inserted it and did not make a recommendation.
Yep.
So yeah, to remove it from the warrant.
Okay, I move to rescind the insertion of the plastic beverage bottle ban.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, so on to budgets, library. Is Jennifer on?
She was.
I'm right here.
Yep.
There she is.
Okay. So if you will you present your budget?
Yep. So I tried to stay within the parameters of keeping our budget as flat as possible. We're in the WEA. That means we have a 3.5% salary raise for all of the positions. So that I have that. And the couple of budget items that I had to go up a little bit, which I explained in my narrative, were contract services because our copier died last year and we now lease a copier instead of having one that we had purchased and we just serviced every year. So we had to add a little bit of that, and I had to add a little bit. I added $2,000 to our materials budget because that has to go up somewhat proportionately with our operating budget in general. But other than that, everything else stayed the same or was reduced. I did reduce our temporary budget staff budget line item. I cut that in half because we just hired a full-time outreach coordinator. And so we are going to be fully staffed as of the week of March 7th. I'm very excited about that. And I think our contract in clams went up $500, but other than that, everything else should look the way it looked last year.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, so I move to approve the fiscal year 2023 library budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thank
Jennifer.
you, Jennifer.
So fire department, and Jennifer, we might, sorry, one thing is that I also want to try to get to the capital items for the respective departments, and the library does have one, I believe. So
Yep.
You'll be the first one once we get to the capital items for that. Okay.
Okay, I'll stay.
Okay. So Chief Polly, fire department budget.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Nope, there I am. Thank
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fire department budget that we're requesting for fiscal 23 is $2,310,715. That's an increase over fiscal year 22 of $231,895, but hold your breath, please. In that, $231,895 includes the 2 firefighter paramedics that were added at town meeting. So those were on a Proposition 2.5 override, and that drops down the actual real increased to $63,815, which is a 3% increase. And that includes such things as we have to house our firefighter paramedics and EMTs now in hotels when they're up at the fire academy. You've heard me discuss that, I believe, in the past, but that's about a $36,000, $37,000 increase that we had no choice in because of the COVID situation, and we still have no choice in. And then the only other real issues is we've had increase in what we call contract services. Those contract services include paying for annual services in upkeep and inspections of our stretchers, our defibrillators, our stair chairs, basically a lot of EMS equipment and including copy machines. And then we have another about $5,000 increase in telephone and $4,000 roughly in gas and diesel. So if just off my quick notes, if I itemize all those down, that $63,000 is eaten up very quickly. And that also includes a couple of contracted pay increases for myself and for our administrative assistant.
Okay. Are there any questions for the chief?
No, I think we've heard everything that from the chief prior to this. So there's nothing new here, I don't think, that we haven't heard from the fire chief prior. So I
Okay.
don't have any questions about it.
Tim Sire?
Yes, to the chief. How you doing this evening? I saw in the budget that there's about $300,000 allocated for overtime and covering shifts when people are on vacation, et cetera. Would it be cheaper to hire another fire personnel to cover those areas than it is to cover it with overtime? Thank you.
No, thank you, Tim. Actually, if you may not have the benefit of this information, but our actually overtime budget has decreased about $30,000 to $40,000 over the last fiscal year or two, and part of that is because we've been able to hire additional people. There's a lot of factors that go into that as to why the numbers are coming down. It's just a lot of factors and issues that come in. But so we have decreased the overtime budget in the last 2 years. But again, and it's not in this current budget that we're requesting for 2023 in the actual operating budget, but we are going to ask for we are asking for 2 more firefighter paramedic EMTs at the Springtown meeting. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
So I move to approve the fire department's budget as presented.
Ellen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Ann and I.
John and I.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Ellen, I. Thank you, chief.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yep,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Chief. All right, police department budget. Chief Early. Sorry
thank
to make you wait.
No, I apologize again. It's been a long year. Just to get started this evening again, good evening to the board. As we close out 2021, we saw about 8,200 calls for service come into the police department. That's about 500 calls up from the previous year. We also saw an increase of about 100 emergency 911 transfers from the previous year also. So clearly we've been busy. We've been staying busy through the shoulder season and the off seasons also. So, you know, we always keep trying to do more with less, but you know, I'm proud of the department, the work that they do, as you see a lot of the times through letters and feedback from the community. So really the police budget, there's really nothing exciting in it this year outside of the request for the 2 new personnel, which is a separate item. The budget's up about 4% from the previous fiscal year. However, there was about a $32,000 and change article from the 2021 meeting on a wage adjustment that was not factored into the FY22 number. So, you know, really bottom line, we're looking at about a $41,000 increase, which is some overtime, fuel, and training, really. So I know there's a pretty extensive package submitted, so I'll just take any questions.
So I have, so we all know that the reserve officer program is being phased out pretty soon. And the overall number of one, and that really affects us in the summer. I'm one of the things that I've been wondering is that it might make sense to hire 1 or 2 traffic enforcement officers, which are not necessarily sworn officers, to assume some of the traffic, the traffic details, and to free up, some of the sworn officers to deal with some of the issues that we're encountering in the summer. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Chief Hurley.
I'll break that down into 2 parts. The first part, I mean, clearly, yes. I mean, especially last season with some perfect storm scenarios with the DCR lot being closed, clearly an increase in our summer population that we did run across some parking issues, some neighborhood issues. I mean, clearly, I'm not against civilians hiring, to ticket, but I got to be honest, it's not what keeps me up at night. I mean, you really have to be careful of having non-sworn people deal with some of these issues. I mean, we have uniformed officers up on our beaches and we're fighting these people back, and we're uniformed. I mean, we are hanging on by a thread some weekends up there. So I just think a lot of the issues that we are encountering there, they're just so complex. And I'm not discounting parking, but I'm going to advertise. We typically will hire 2 community service officers, which could fulfill that role to some degree. I mean, the one I had last year is not coming back, and I'm not holding out high hopes to even fill one of these positions this year. So I hope that answered the question. I mean, it's like I said, it's not what keeps me up at night, especially about this upcoming season. I mean, we are just finding these calls are just so complex, and I'll use a very quick example yesterday on a mental health call. My only 2 officers on the road respond, and they make the scene safe for the fire to come in, and they were all on scene for 47 minutes trying to resolve the situation. I mean, that's what we're up against. We're not up against going in 3 minutes later, clearing, and we're back on patrol. These issues, are just really extending. So if that helps at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not questioning the complexity of the calls, and those are definitely not something that, a traffic enforcement officer would be responsible for. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, in my opinion, any little bit helps. Somebody has to manage them. You need equipment, they need a vehicle, all of which I don't have. So it's that would be something we would have to put together. And I know in bigger communities like Provincetown where there's paid parking, you have a parking department that deals with a lot of those issues. So I have no problem if I can recruit or advertise and get 1 or 2 people to help with the issue. Again, equipment and a vehicle would, come to mind. That, I can only get a bike so far around town, and that's the issue with the community service officer downtown.
Yeah, and I just, I don't want to take up a sworn officer's time in the summer to deal with, parking.
No, I
so that's my thinking, at least. I mean, it's and it allows us, it would potentially allow us to have to take that load off during the summer of the sworn officers. So.
And if I can, I will only have 1 summer officer going into this season. That's Mark Spiegel, who will be 100% dedicated to the beaches.
Okay. So I guess, could I request that you look into a traffic enforcement officer, not for this year, but sometime in the future?
Nope, that's something I can work with. And I know the community services director has some experience in this also, where some of her people do parking enforcement, not just in the beaches, but in surrounding roads leading to beaches. So I think that's something we can grow on from there.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion for the police department budget? Chief Polly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, and parking is a big problem, particularly in the summertime. And I would only encourage the select board to again look at paid parking at the marina, because we're letting tens of thousands of dollars go down the drain every summer, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if we need income in this town and revenue, and we do, to support public safety and marina services and shell fishing, then it's time for this board to have a serious discussion, with all due respect, to getting paid parking at the marina parking area. Enough is enough. You can't go anywhere else in New England or on the East Coast without having to pay to park your vehicle for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours a day. And we're just letting a lot of money go down the drain. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that, but I don't want to get into a whole discussion on it tonight. We have the police department's budget in front of us. So if we can, Helen, but if it's
I
about
lowered
parking,
my
keep it
hand.
really, okay. So I move to approve the fiscal year 2023 police department budget as presented.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Con I.
Michael,
Brian.
aye.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Ryan, aye.
Helen, I.
Okay,
Thank you, Chief.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, I plan to get to your capital items shortly as well. So, okay, Shellfish Department, Nancy, is she back with us, or let's see?
Chair?
Yep.
She is here.
I will recuse myself from the
Okay.
Shellfish Department budget.
Okay, Nancy? All right. You have to unmute.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
Apart from the required union increases in salaries and the fact that we did increase the pay rate, hourly rate for our seasonal help, because the select board approved small increases and we chose the bottom of that for our part-time help. Other than that, so those kind of hourly wage and salary increases, budget 179, which is our operating budget, is just level funded, the same as last year. We did the exact same thing for shellfish propagation. Now that we have our revolving fund, we are taking $40,000 from the revolving fund and using it to fund our budget line 180. And that means that only $6,000 comes from taxpayer dollars for the shellfish propagation fund. And then one thing that we did add in is that our summer help does use their cell phones for accessing the internet when they're out on the flats to check people's permits. And they do use them for taking calls. So I would like to reimburse them, and that would be $300. So that's an additional budget request. And then a part-time seasonal person that would work in the winter. So my goal would be to get whoever is our full-time summer deputy constable to stay on with a part-time winter job. And this is to help me in the office. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the narrative, but the demands on the department have increased exponentially. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done for grants. This is stuff that was never done before, and now it's not only required, but expected. And, or maybe that's the other way around. It's not only expected, but it's required. And we have to keep good documentation going. And it's proven very difficult to do with just the three of us. The industry has grown in the last 10 years, and it requires a lot more on the water efforts. And a warden cannot really solve problems or hear anything if they're in the office all the time. So I really do have to get out there on the flats and speak with people and monitor and do enforcement. And we also have a boat fishery, so that requires time at high tide. And sometimes I'll get in after doing all the documentation after a low tide patrol, and I'll have already put in 6 hours. And you can't do 2 hours of documentation and paperwork. It's really getting out of control. In addition to the town requirements and all the grant requirements, we have the state now passing on things to towns that decide to use manage their own shellfish resources. Now we have state demands being put on us as well. Vibrio control plans came into effect about 10 years ago, and each year they're handing us more and more work to do, documentation to provide. And it's in our best interest as a shellfishing town to provide this documentation, because it's what lets the federal government keep us open for interstate commerce. So it's all for good. It just takes a lot of time. And so I was really hoping to get somebody in the wintertime to help me keep on top of the paperwork.
Okay, so for the current seasonal position, how many hours are they working, and for how long?
So the seasonal deputy is May 19th or May 12th, May 12th to like November 3rd, full-time, 40 hours a week. And then after that, so from November 4th to May 11th, it would be, I think I put 25 hours a week. In the budget, I'll check that right.
So, Charlie, how many hours over a year before benefits kick in? Because I think this exceeds that.
I think 20.
Yeah, so I think benefits would be applied to this position as well, if it's the same person that holds it. I also.
Okay, so that plan of mine might not work out, but I felt like I talked to somebody in the accounting department that said that this was okay for me to add in. Maybe I shouldn't do my plan of 40 hours to 20. Maybe I'll just have to hire somebody new, or maybe use the 20 hours. The person who works part-time in the summer could work part-time in the winter too. But I feel like I talked about this with somebody in town hall, so I'll have to go look through my notes, but.
We could I could be wrong, but I think then they're eligible for health insurance, but Nancy and I could check.
Okay, yeah, health insurance and yeah, the others.
And pension maybe, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that, the town needs to start when we propose a position, to have it funded by an override for a new position. That way we don't, yeah. So, I mean, that's generally considered a good practice. So I'd be interested in this as a separate warrant article, even though it adds to the warrant. But I don't know how the other board members feel. Because either way, it's going to be part of the, either it's an override for this single position, similar to police and fire, or it's included as part of the general operating override.
Yeah.
So, Helen?
However it happens, I think that we need to be spending more money on this. It's the town's single biggest industry. We're finally experiencing a functional department. And we need all the I's dotted. And Nancy has been doing it for enough years now so that she can really tell what it takes to do it, even though it's increasing even as we speak. I mean, she just described that very clearly. And I think it's time to consider having this tiny department for, you know, one of the largest, if not the largest fishery in the Commonwealth, have more than 3 employees. So yeah, I'm very, very conservative about adding a position. Personnel board would have to vote on it, but I think we should consider doing this. Thank you.
Nancy?
I forgot to let you know that the Finance Committee just voted 8-0 with 8-0 with 1 abstention to recommend or approve my budget as presented. And the additional budget request of the part-timer and then the cell phone was also approved of a vote of 5-3, and again with 1 abstention. I forgot to communicate what just happened on the Finance Committee call.
Yeah. So I think like the telephone and all of that makes sense to be included as part of the, you know, the general budget, but where there's a new position, we need to have the funding to support the position. And we need to get out of the habit of adding services and positions without having funding dedicated to them. So that would be with like a separate warrant article for this. Nancy?
Yeah, so one of the things that FinCom also said was I told them about Charlie's suggestion that we all look at the fees that we charge. So I could bring to the select board some proposed increase in shellfish permit fees, even though you know, the commercials are closed for this year, but there's still room for us to look at the recreational fee levels, fee structure, and perhaps increase that.
Yeah,
because most of our permits will get sold in the summertime anyway, so we'll be in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, you can't count the increase in the fee to the until it's received for budgets. I don't know, where's the board on this? I just think it needs to be a separate warrant article. Janet?
That's a hard one, whether it should be separate or not. I'm for both of them. I just want to throw this out there that in this day and age where we need loyalty of employees and to support employees that are having a hard time finding living, it always comes down to like, we shouldn't have them work long enough that they would get health insurance. Health insurance should be, you know, it really should be a federal gift, but not for discussion now, but in the future, I think we should consider health insurance and a lot of other things. And that could be done by increase in our rates, in our fees, things like that. So
Yeah,
don't even need to talk about it really, just that I'm for that.
the issue with benefits is that the amount requested doesn't include benefits.
Yeah.
So there would have to be a change in the amount requested.
No, I know. I'm just throwing this out there for the future that, you know, it's health insurance is a good thing.
Okay, so I'm going to try a couple different motions here. So I move to approve the Shellfish Department's conservation propagation budget as drafted.
Second.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, aye.
Aye.
Ryan, aye.
Helen, aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay, so I move that the additional position of a seasonal part-time shellfish warden be drafted as a separate warrant article.
Second.
Wait.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, through you to Nancy, is that what you're calling it? Nancy,
I mean,
what's
if
the
it's,
term for the position?
it's a deputy constable, because that's what we are in the department.
Deputy constable, so that should be in the motion, please. Thank you.
Deputy shellfish constable.
Deputy Shellfish Constable. Okay, so the motion was moved and seconded. Can I have a roll call vote?
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. And then I move to approve the Shellfish Department's budget as amended.
Second.
Okay, roll call
Oh,
vote.
excuse me, I'm sorry. There's no amendments. My budget did not include it. My budget
Okay.
did not include. It was always separate. I never included it. So I just had this problem at FinCom too. The additional budget request was never added into the budget that I presented to the town. It was always additional and to the side.
Okay, it's part of the same item, line item. So
But
I move to approve the Shellfish Department's request for additional budget as amended.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I. Helen?
Oh, yeah, Helen, I.
Okay.
Nancy, does that, through you, Ryan, Nancy, does that give you what you need?
Not yet. We have one more motion that we have to cover.
I'm
so
not sure what is as amended. Could somebody explain to me? I'm sorry, but what does
that's-
as amended refer to? Amending what?
That's to have the seasonal position as a separate warrant article.
Okay.
So I move to approve the Shellfish Department's general budget as drafted.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. With that, we are annual town meeting warrant articles. My intention today is to just go over the articles specific to the budgets that are for the departments that are before us tonight. So, and I don't know, I think at that point we'll be ready to wrap for the night. So let's see, let me pull up my warrant. It's probably open, right? It is open. Okay. All right, so I said I would get to the library first, and their article is capital request for computer and software upgrade project. I think we've already heard about this.
Yeah.
But Chief Hurley and Mike, before we get into that.
I was just trying to get unmuted and say that Chief Hurley has his hand up.
Yep, Chief Hurley.
No, I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Only because I'll get in the car to start heading home, but I did my capital back in December, January with you. Do you need me to stay on for that? We had the discussion about the hybrid. I mean, this went back and
I
forth
don't.
with 2 meetings.
How does the other board members feel? I think I'm.
No, I don't think it's necessary.
Yep, I think I'm good too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm good, but Chief Hurley, was there anything new since then?
No, but it was submitted back in the fall. No,
Thank you.
thanks.
Okay. And Jennifer's updated us on this before, but Jennifer, if you may, the computer software and upgrade project.
Yeah, our computers, our public computers, some of them have not been updated in years. They're running Windows 2003 and they essentially do not run anymore. And we have a situation in our area of where our public computers are, where we actually have paper bags over some of the terminals because they just do not work anymore. So we're in a sort of situation where computers need to be replaced, and as does software, and that's just where we are. I mean, it predates me. I started 7 years ago, and it predates me by many years, the big project to install the computers there. So
Okay. So Charlie, I have a question. So this is with the capital budget. Do we have to vote on the individual items to insert?
Well, I don't know how you, I would say yes. I mean, that, I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is obviously past due.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if there's grant funding out there for like this sort of thing that we can look into, even if it's approved, but maybe not. But this just goes to show that we have been restrained fiscally as a town as far as, spending frivolously, particularly when we've been putting off stuff that's still running, Windows 2003. I mean, that's like from when I was in high school. So yeah, I mean, it's time to do this, I think. And I know we're having fiscal trouble, but I can't find on here the budget line item of the total expense.
Is 35,000.
35,000.
Yeah.
It's in the
And
warrant.
that's a ballpark figure that I don't even know. That's with all like UPS backup batteries, and it has a lot of systems in there
It's all
to
networked and
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
exactly.
that. That's all the networking and everything.
Mhm.
And do all the terminals need to be replaced, or is
No,
that,
not all of them.
and are we just replacing the ones that need to be replaced? Or is this just a full like?
No, I'm just replacing the ones that really need to be replaced. And I don't need to replace all the keyboards. But I don't want things that don't really work, and I don't want things that are not
functioning or
not functioning well or aren't ergonomically, you know what I mean? I want like a decent looking and a decent working, because we find that the ones that we hold on to then end up breaking, and we need, we're constantly getting not new, but IT will bring over keyboards and mice and whatever from other departments that have been discarded, and then that stuff breaks. And, so that's kind of where we are with our public computers. And, it's just not a good situation.
So do you know how many computers are being replaced?
We would probably start off at, well, I mean, there are 17 of them. So there would probably be full on replacing 11 of them, and then maybe getting a couple of, but also looking at different ways of looking at that area, like perhaps a couple of laptops that could be used in different places in the library, and not just having all desktop static terminals that, so we're looking at different ways of looking at computing in the library.
Okay. So like, not to pick it apart really, but at 11 computers, I'm just wondering, is this contracted through, like, has there been any kind of RFP or anything like that on this, or is this like, I'm just wondering where the number sort of where we arrived at 30.
I arrived at the number by talking to our vendor through Barnstable County IT.
Okay. All right. So that's where the number was arrived at. Just,
yes,
it seems a little high for like, basically web equipped computers. It's about $3,000 a piece with the networking, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It is, I'm not saying it is what it isn't. I just was wondering where the number was arrived from and if we need to do it all at once or if it's on the high side or whatever, but I'll let the
It
rest. of the board-
probably is on the high side. It probably is on the high side, but I don't want to not be able to get, what I need to get. And we don't have what people need. They don't have the ability, to, at the moment, and the people don't have the ability to do proper computing in the library.
Sure, yeah, I don't have any qualms about that. I just have a little bit of sticker shock because you can basically replace every single computer with an iMac for less than that. And I don't know, I just don't know the breakdown of the networking or anything like that, or why it costs so much to hook up those computers. I'm assuming we'd be getting PCs.
Well, we have PCs and we have there's printers involved. There's also like for, we have a gaming situation with kids. We have, we have a special computer for them that needs to be upgraded and is software dependent. We have, like I said, I want to replace a couple of our desktops or supplement with laptops so people can go and be in different areas of the library with the computers. Just have the flexibility for all of that, as well as the software that we need.
Okay.
Anyone else want to have a?
Yeah, I mean, $3,000 per PC is that's like
A lot.
that's like the top of the line PCs. Screens, you can get a decent one for 150 or so. You can spend more than that if you want. Uninterrupted power supplies, depending on what you want, is a couple hundred. A lot of software is actually software as a service now, so they come with annual subscriptions. Individual licenses can definitely add up quick though, for software, really quickly. So I and then networking equipment, depending on how it's networked, I mean, that can add like $100 per PC. You probably want a hardline connection. I don't know. I mean, it's conceivable that's the range that's required.
I mean, all these get networked to our printers, to our scanner, to there's just.
Yeah, and then if you're getting,
plus it's going to be a lot of time of Barnstable County IT's time. I don't know. This comes from my discussion with them.
okay, so it also includes some of the contract services for deployment. So I would say it's reasonable. That's a reasonable dollar figure. So I moved to insert the library department's capital request for a computer and software upgrade project.
1 second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
John, aye.
Michael, aye.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Did I vote?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I will say there are a lot of people in town without computers and without connectivity, and they do very much rely on the library for that. So I very much appreciate this.
And they rely on the librarian's assistance as well, and I know that they really appreciate that as well. So
thank you.
Okay. This is another question, I guess, for Charlie or the board. So We have the capital budget as one item, as one article item that we would make a recommendation on as a single article. Just so we're aware of that, okay? So we're inserting now, and then after we're done, we would make a motion on, you know, the article as a whole, okay? So let's see, is Nancy still on? Oh, yes, she is. Okay. So Nancy.
Yes, I am.
All
Sorry.
right, no worries. So we have the Shellfish and Beach Office Repair Project. Again, I think, does the board need a refresher on this or not?
No.
No,
Okay. So I move to insert the Shellfish and Beach Office Repair Project.
second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I.
Michael abstain.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, and then for the truck replacement, is there any discussion on that? Okay,
Sure.
seeing none, I move to insert the truck replacement into the capital, into Article 4 capital budget.
Helen, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I.
Is this for the shellfish truck?
Yep,
Michael abstain.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Okay, so we have the police department.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks, Nancy.
The police cruiser replacement and the bulletproof vest replacement. Again, you know, we've had an in-depth conversation on this already. So I'd like to insert the police department's capital improvement requests, or the capital requests into the FY23 capital budget.
Second,
Done.
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I.
Okay. And then we have fire department. So Chief Polly.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. So I think for the hose replacement, the portable radio and the mobile terminal project replacement project, that's pretty clear cut. Charlie, I guess this is more a question for you. Are there any of these that you are working on currently, I guess?
The fire department?
Yep.
No.
Okay. So are there any questions from the board on
Well,
that?
if I could, Mr. Chair, I think,
Sure.
Charlie, you and I discussed that the mobile data terminals will come out of the ambulance receipts fund. I don't have the paperwork in front of me. I
Yes.
apologize. I
Oh,
don't know
I'm
if that's what
sorry.
the board sees.
It
Oh,
says
yeah,
that-
I'm sorry. Yeah, the ambulance replacement in the mobile data would be out of the ambulance receipts, chief.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I move to insert the fire department's capital items into the fiscal year 23 capital budget, Article 4.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
And I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, I.
Okay, and then before we get towards the end, the other one is Article 17, which is the fire engine replacement. Charlie, is this one that you were working on still?
Yeah. Chief and I were going to sit down and try to come up with an alternative plan here. We haven't had a chance to do that yet.
Okay. So should we take no action at this time?
I think we should vote to insert, and then we might come up with a different funding plan. Does that sound reasonable, Chief?
I think that sounds very reasonable, Charlie, that if, you know, if we vote to insert and then we can maybe come up with some type of alternative funding plan. I know that's what I'm working on, and Charlie and I have had these discussions, so yes.
Okay, so I move to insert article number 17, fire engine replacement into the 2022 annual town meeting warrant.
Second,
Okay, roll call vote.
Janet, I.
Aye. Ryan,
Michael,
aye.
aye.
Sorry, Mike.
I said aye.
Ryan, did you vote?
Yep, Ryan, aye.
Helen, I.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. So in the warrant, we have the elementary school fire suppression system project. I thought we had voted on that, but there's none listed, so I just want to,
Take another vote.
yep,
What
You
number is
did
that?
vote, I just did the minutes today. You voted to approve it
okay,
and insert it, recommend and insert. It was
Okay.
2 separate motions.
What
Okay.
number is that?
that's Article 22.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, I think that's it. Let's see. Yep. That's it. So with that, I'd like to get towards the end of our, or move on to the rest of our agenda, or the last parts of our agenda. So yep, Mike.
I was just wondering, Charlie, if we've had any conversations with any departments about capital expenditures that may be able to be put off on this, and what those might be. And you don't have to give me an answer about which ones now. I'm just curious whether those conversations are sort of brewing.
Well, the answer is, I haven't had those we had a department head meeting last week and went over general stuff, but no, I haven't had a chance to start down that road yet.
Okay, thank you.
So select board reports. Are there any?
No.
Okay.
Uh,
Go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, it's sort of a report. So the chair and I guess Rebecca and Charlie and Rebecca roughly, there are some tweaks that were generated by Victor Staley on the ADU article, which have no effect on the content except to clarify a few things and change a term to its legal set of words, which is Victor Staley pointed out, there's no such thing as a building inspector. There's a building commissioner. So there are a few words changed, and the Wellfleet Housing Authority and the partnership are going to be meeting tomorrow. And I, of course, because I was involved in, with the 3 other women in putting it together and getting people to vet it for us. So it's going to come our way. And I'm going to say it again. It just has a few words added at Victor Staley's suggestion, which in no way changes the content. But he felt that it made it absolutely crystal clear in a way that to him, perhaps it wasn't, or whatever. So we need to send it formally to the planning board. And I'm just putting that out there, and I'm putting it under my reports part simply because I was part of that whole discussion because of my initial participation.
Okay.
So that's it.
Mike?
Not a discussion, but a question, Helen. Is this something that you're bringing forward to the partnership and stuff like that to alter?
No, Gary,
who is the drafted changes coming from?
well, originally it was Sharon and Elaine and, Olga and I looked at it, but originally the drafted changes came from Victor Staley. Okay.
He wrote it down? And
No,
submitted
yeah,
it?
a few words. I thought I copied you all with this. Yeah, in other words, he went through the approved article and said, if you put this in and this in and this in and change.
My question is, did he write these changes and submit it to these other groups? That's my question.
Well, he's gone now and Elaine is bringing.
That's not really what
There we go. But I'm reporting it to you because I was involved and it's coming to our, to our table. Okay?
So you wrote it.
No.
Okay.
Victor Staley.
Let's not get
wrote
into this right now, so.
Victor Staley
All right,
wrote.
all right. So, any others? So, town administrators report, Charlie?
Okay, thank you. Now my report is in the package. I'm not going to go through each item. I'll just maybe comment on a couple of items there. Number one, I talked about the water rate discussions in that report, and we did hold another meeting yesterday with our consultant and a couple of water commissioners. I think it's our third or fourth meeting. So we're getting close to having a proposal that we'll be able to share publicly soon. So we're making good progress. The town accountant, I've done second interviews this week. I'm not sure, but I'm getting close to making a recommendation for appointment. I have two finalists, frankly, that I'm really excited about. I need to talk to Rebecca roughly a little further about it, but I feel like I'm going to have some good news quite soon on that important matter. And tomorrow in executive session, we start interviews for the Friday for the town administrator. I'm very excited about that. I think that's all I need to add to the report.
Okay. Any questions for Charlie? Helen?
Yeah, Charlie, however briefly, and maybe you would need to look at notes. Can you tell us what happened during that meeting with whoever it was from the DOT and Jay Norton and Steve Tupper about the mysterious shared use path? Because we've never heard about that. And that was the only meeting. In other words, they told the town through you about that. And it happened, when did it happen? It was the second of which month? I forget.
Yeah, well, I did not attend that meeting. Jay did, Jay Norton. And Jay wrote some notes down. I thought I shared that with everybody, but I'll have to go back and check.
And forgive me, Jay Tupper seemed to think that you were there. Was Becky roughly there?
No, I think maybe he's thinking that because I was going to try to attend, but I didn't. That's what I would surmise.
Yeah, it would be good if we knew the particulars of it, because if you remember, we were going to have a whole joint meeting.
Yeah. I think Joe, I'll go. Jay's on vacation this week, but I'll write a note to check.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, topics for future discussion.
I've got one.
Janet?
So I would like to ask committees and departments to start formalizing requests and working together for requests for the ARPA funds that will be coming our way, and to even discuss with other towns to work together on it. I don't know how we would actually do that, but we should all start thinking like housing, that they should come up with a number, all the different housing committees should come up with, maybe we should even meet as a group just on where we want to see money go, and do it soon.
Okay. John?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate something brought up by Chief Pauly earlier, and it is time to get started on a meaningful move towards addressing the paid parking issue at the Marina.
Yep. So I'll work on getting that on. We're gonna have a packed slate for the next month or two, just so everybody's aware. But I'll work on it. Helen?
Yeah, for some reason, my hand isn't showing on the screen. So, yeah, and I was going to bring up the Chief Polly thought too, but when we look at it, let's remember and access all the paperwork on the very close study that we did a number of years ago on having public parking down in the Marina area.
It was just 2 years ago.
It was when Harry was
No, it was when Dan Hort was there.
No,
I was the liaison. It was.
You're right about that, Janet, but it also happened before that.
It happens all the time. So yeah, we can
Okay,
have.
okay,
Hold
okay,
on, let me
okay. That's sufficient.
I have something else.
Okay.
Thank you. We need to figure out the schedule for sending that ADU tweak article to the planning board. And I'm not sure, it's all getting very last minute here, but perhaps that could be on our next agenda. It's basically housekeeping, so it should happen simply. But don't we have to formally vote to send it?
Yes, we do. We need to know where it's coming from.
Well, you have been told where it's coming from now.
No, I haven't.
Okay, shall I read?
I've had you telling me it's coming from somebody, and Rebecca Ruffley's asked the same thing. So, yeah.
Respectfully, Ryan, it came from Victor Staley, and it was received from Victor Staley by two of the people who drafted the article. Okay, Elaine, who's on the chair of the Wellfleet Housing Authority, and Sharon Rule-Agger. Okay, and you can confirm this.
I mean, I have it on the agenda for probably in the next meeting, but they need to submit it as coming from them.
Well, they're going to vote on it tomorrow, the two groups.
Okay, so, all right. Minutes. Are there any questions, I guess? Is the 15th included here as well, Rebecca?
No, I just finished the 15th this morning.
Okay,
So I'm going to send them to you before the next meeting, so you guys all have plenty of time to review them.
okay. Actually, I skipped something. So correspondence and vacancy. I think we addressed the correspondence. Is there anything that anybody would like to discuss now? Okay, seeing none, on to minutes. So I move to approve the minutes of February 8th, 2022 as drafted by the executive secretary.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
Brian, I.
Helen abstain. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. Well, good night, everybody.
Adjourn.
Yeah, I move to adjourn. Sorry.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
But wait, we need to vote.
We actually have to.
Oh, we didn't vote on it?
No,
What?
I seconded it.
roll
Third.
call vote.
Janet, I.
Aye.
Michael, I.
Ryan, I.
Helen, I. Bye-bye.